Cool. So say you've taken out a loan position with Bold. Now you want to kind of use your Bold across DeFi. What can you do? So we have a very uh, cool Dune dashboard, which showcases pretty much all the different venues across Liquity V2 and the friendly forks that we have, where you can put your Bold to work. And it also gives you an indication of what their TVL is of the different forks. And we have also done kind of like a ecosystem APR based on the average FTV. You know, it's kind of hard to say what the average FTV of all these 15 plus friendly forks are going to be. But what we've done is, okay, based on an average FTV of say 10 million and the fact that let's say these guys are going to come out with their tokens within the next 9 months or worst case scenarios within the next 15 months, what we have done is we've kind of given a rough indication of what that might be in terms of like a total APR of sorts, right? So I'm going to be showcasing just shortly all these mainnet venues where you can earn yield upwards of 12% on Bold without leverage. But on top of that 12%, one thing to take into account is also this ecosystem APR where we're taking into account, you know, the lowest FTV on the assumption that it's a protocol that's coming out with their tokens over 15 months at a 10 million FTV valuation, and the best case scenario where it's an average FTV of 50 million and they come out with their tokens in the next 9 months, right? So this is where, you know, the APRs are kind of, there's a big gap. It's just because we want to have a worst case scenario and a best case scenario, so to speak. Here, when you go into this Dune dashboard, I'm going to put this onto the chit chat channel right now. Um, you will also be able to go to directly. We have inserted the link right here, so you can kind of just click on the link and it directs you directly to the decks where these opportunities lay as well. And we keep updating this as we go so that you know it's easy for our users. Um, so without further ado, the let me jump into kind of the, as I mentioned, there's so many yield opportunities. Just on mainnet, we have like over 15. Um, but for the purpose of time and for the call, I want to focus mainly on yield opportunities that are uh, a mixture of, let's say, blue chip and also high yielding. And by high yielding, I mean, say, 12% plus in terms of APR. So first venue that we're going to go onto is Curve. Um, so on Curve, there's actually multiple yield venues that we have. So let me just see what's here. Huh, unresponsive. Okay, cool. So on Curve, we have multiple venues. The first is, of course, Bold USDC, where you can deposit Bold and USDC. You get 5% in Bold. On top of that 5%, you also get all these airdrops from the forks. We also have the Bold LUSD pool here. We're getting 8% in Bold, and on top of that, you might be wondering where this 8% coming from. This 8% and this 5% is actually coming from Liquity itself. We allocate 25% of the protocol revenues to go towards various different initiatives, and the Bold USDC pool and the Bold LUSD pools are two that are receiving every week a portion of the rewards. But the ones that I wanted to highlight today is this DeFi Stable Avengers pool, which is actually the a pool set up by the guys over at Asymmetry, which is a friendly fork of ours on mainnet. And there you can pretty much LP between FXUSD, which is the Aladdin DAO's stablecoin, USDC, USDF, AF, which is their stablecoin, and Bold. And once you deposit your liquidity on this LP on this pool, you can stake it onto Convex and receive 18.77%. Now, on top of this 18.77%, you also receive uh, tokens, sorry, not tokens, points from Asymmetry uh, that are being dedicated towards Liquidity V2 users, right? So in terms of Asymmetry Finance, if you go into the Dune dashboard again, you'll see that they're dedicating 1% of their token towards Bold liquidity providers to this pool. So eventually, at one point, um, they will be emitting this their token into this pool as well, on top of the 17% that, sorry, 18% that you see here. So that's one example of a mainnet pool where you're getting 18%. On top of that, there's multiple more. So there is Equabo, which is actually a very interesting DEX that's built by uh, one of the one of the founders or founding members of Uniswap, actually. And they have a bold USDC pool that is paying out 14.5% um, in bold back to LP providers, right? And the cool thing here is that you can be very kind of concentrated with the liquidity that you provide between Bold and USDC, and you can be as minuscule as you want to be. So, but in my case, I do I do believe that Bold, at least in the last 4 months or so, has rarely hovered over one. So it's probably best to have a range of, say, 0.995 and 1, because if it's under 0.995, there are redemptions that kick in, which pushes it up. So yeah, even with that, you can expect APR to be pretty high. So the 9.24% is coming from the a portion of that 25% PIL that I mentioned. And on top of that, you're getting roughly 5% in swap fees from this pool itself as well. So it's actually, yeah, around 15%, give or take. And that yield is being paid out in a stable coin that is bold as well. So it's not like a shit coin, let's say. Um, so those are two venues on mainnet where you're getting, as I mentioned, 15% plus, but there's more. And one that you guys at Rocket Pool, I'm sure, are quite familiar with is obviously Balancer. And on Balancer, there are two pools. There's one where it's a bold USDC pool, um, which is actually a gyroscope. It's underlying, it's using the technology around gyroscope. So what's happening is that the USDC portion of this is actually being lent out onto Aave and getting the Aave yield as well. So the yield here you get is 9.51%. And on top of that 9.51%, you also do get the airdrops from all these forks as well. Um, One thing I wanted to quickly show is that, I'm talking about all these airdrops, so you might be wondering, okay, I'm providing liquidity on these pools. Is there a way I can see what my points are and where I'm at with that? We actually do have a leaderboard as well. I'm going to share this onto the chat as well. So when you do provide liquidity onto these venues that I'm talking about, they're actually going to be showing up on these on the different columns that you see here as well, and they will form a total point total, so to speak. The idea is that we're telling forks to use this Dune dashboard as like a leaderboard of kind of source of truth, so to speak, and allocate rewards that way as well. So just wanted to quickly touch on that quickly. So back onto this balancer pool. So on this balancer pool, obviously you get 9.51%. And on top of that, you get the friendly fork emissions. I would say this is more for the hands-off, set and forget, kind of passive LP who wants to get their 10% and just kind of not really worry about their position. I'm personally also doing that just because there's so much going on that I don't want to be managing my position all the time. So this is a good one for that. But if you're looking for something a bit more lucrative, there is also a bold USDN pool here that is paying out 25% as a base APR, and it can go all the way up to 56% if you have VE BAL as well. So you might be wondering, what is USDN? USDN is a stablecoin that has been created by the guys over at SmartDex. They're like a synthetic perp protocol. The stablecoin is actually similar to USDE from Ethena, where it's like a delta neutral synthetic dollar. It's backed by like underlying Lido ETH long positions, and it's all on chain, all decentralized. So it's relatively new, but in terms of uh, kind of the decentralized aspect of it, I would say it's pretty safe. Um, but also that reflects on the APRs compared to like your USDC. I suppose it's a relatively new, so um, it shows on the on the yield you see here. But yeah, if you're willing to stomach the relatively new nature of the stablecoin, APRs are very lucrative. Like you're talking 25% to 55%. You can actually go onto Aura and juice this up even further. I believe if you were to deposit your LP here and then go onto Aura and then stake that Aura, then your yield is like 33% on the base level. So it's very high for a stablecoin LP pair. Um, and yeah, I think those are the kind of the main ones for mainnet. But as I mentioned, there's so much more here. Like if you were to go onto our Dune dashboard that I shared, like you can get right now on Pendle 10% on a PT, right? And same goes for Spectra as well. And there's also if you were to do if you want to go a little bit involve a bit of leverage, what you can also do is you can take we have something called Y-Bold, which is a yield-bearing version of Bold in the stability pool. You can take that Y-Bold and deposit it into one of our forks. Well, Y-Bold, before I move on, is earning like 5% in yield. Oh, sorry, 6% actually. 6% in yield. And on top of that 6%, what you can do is you can go onto a symmetry and say you want to put in 200,000, I don't know, just for example. You can borrow at very uh, high LTVs, and you can kind of loop that up further. So let's say you loop it up at 2% per loop. 6.5% minus 2%, that's 4.5% per loop. So if you were to loop this up like 4x or 5x, you can get 25% that is paid out to you in Bold. Or if you want to go even more degen, you can loop it up to 10x and earn like even more, like you're talking like 40% APR there. So that's also a possibility for you as well, and you can use the Dune dashboard here to see what are the available options. So that's on mainnet, but you know th there's also forks, right? We have last time I came on here, we actually had just launched or had no, actually it was maybe our previous deployment, and we were just starting out, so there was not much of an ecosystem. But now, out of the 15 plus forks that we have signed, we have like 8 liquidity venues for Bold across all these chains that are live. And you can go and see on the same Dune dashboard a link to the DEX venues that they're at. A lot of them are on Curve, but there's also more lucrative ones on um, various other chains as well. First things first, our de facto bridge for Bold is Chainlink CCIP. The UI for that is app.transporter.io. You can use it to bridge Bold from Ethereum onto all these chains that you're seeing on the screen. So Base, Parachain, Hyperliquid, Avalanche, Optimism, and vice versa. So make sure, like that's something when you do mint Bold, make sure to take that into consideration. Um, so say you want to bridge Bold and you want to, I don't know, you're very bullish on say Felix because you believe that Felix is gonna because Hyperliquid is quite new and there's a lot of demand. You want to get exposure to Felix. In Felix's case, for example, they have a live points program, and they're allocating. Let me just zoom out a little bit. Sorry. They're allocating 2.75% to liquidity holders on mainnet, but they're giving 1.25% to the this particular pool that I'm going to show now. So in Felix's case, there's a USDTO FEUSD Bold pool. Felix has, by the way, 1 billion TVL, so there it's quite big. And they don't have a token yet, but they have a live points program. If you were to deposit into this pool here that only has 400K so far, um, you pretty much get a portion of the 1.25% going to you. Um, so, you know, we have a obviously this FDV of 50 million as our max, just because we want to be conservative. But obviously, you can do your own math to figure out what do you think for Felix will be worth. But just to give you an idea that this can be quite lucrative, because even if we were to take into account for Felix's case, if we were to deposit there, if we were to take into account 50 million FDV, we're talking about potentially 200% APR if we were to deposit into that pool. And the same goes for all these other venues that I'm going to show shortly. So Felix's one method is pretty simple. You have to bridge bold. You have to acquire USDTO and FEUSD, which is their stablecoin, and then you stake that onto this curve pool here. It's curve, so it's relatively blue chip as well in terms of DEX. With forks, we try to tell them to choose the best DEX of the most reputable DEX, and it's up to them really to choose whichever they choose. But a lot of them are choosing curve. So that's one example. The second example is back to Balancer again. Balancer also has a pool with one of the other forks, which is using rETH as collateral on Arbitrum, and that's rETH. So there is a bold USND USDC pool on Balancer where you pretty much can provide liquidity for these three assets, and you're getting 5%. And on top of that 5%, you get I believe it's 1.25% of rETH's tokens allocated to you as well. So you can do your math on what you expect that points allocation to be, but just that's another example. Same concept though, you have to bridge bold using transporter. Just want to reiterate that. And then there is a pretty interesting one that the guys over at Barabaro have built. So Barabaro is actually a Liquity fork on Barachain. In their case, what they're doing is they're actually allocating their tokens directly into the necked bold honey. So just before I continue here, the names are pretty weird. So just to give you the context, necked is actually the PayPal USD wrapper on Barachain. So if you're comfortable holding PayPal USD, then you should be comfortable holding necked. And honey is their stablecoin, Barabar stablecoin. And for providing liquidity between these three, you get 23%. This 23%, if you were to stake into this vault, is actually being auto compounded back into stables. So it is actually a 23% that is being yielded in stables. So what Barabaro have done is that off the 1% allocation, they're directly emitting it directly into this vault as and auto compounding it for you. So as a user, it's pretty hands-free as well. And yeah, it's 23%, pretty appealing. There's also a few more. We have a fork on Avalanche that's live that is yielding 38% right now. Their stablecoin AXD is backed by staked Avalanche. And you can also bridge bold using Chainlink Transporter. But yeah, I'll stop here now because I just wanted to. I know I have been talking now for 20 minutes straight, and there's a lot of yield opportunities, but just wanted to highlight the main ones that are yielding 15% plus. Yeah, I'll stop here, and maybe you guys have some questions, and you can chime in.
Yeah, I had a question, but I'll let others go first here. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to step on somebody there, but let me just see if I can kind of summarize this and the process that you're outlining here. I guess the first step is to just take our favorite LST like rETH, deposit into Liquity, and borrow against it to produce the bold stablecoin. And the APY or APR that you showed on the screen, that's a borrow rate APY, correct? That's the rate that we would have to pay kind of in addition to our principal in order to recover our deposited rETH. Is that correct?
Correct. So when you are let's say, you see my screen again?
Yes.
Uh, yeah, cool. So say you are depositing, I don't know, in this example, we're putting 30 rETH in there. You want to borrow, say, I don't know, 100,000 bold. Uh, you will set an interest rate of your choosing, which is the 5.5% that you can choose whatever you want, but let's say 5.5, just to be on the safer side. Your net APY for this position is 2.23%. So you're going to be paying 5.5% on the 100,000 bold that you're borrowing. But keep in mind that you're also receiving I don't know what the rETH yield is right now, but I think it's 3%, right? So roughly 3.5% or so.
Yeah, and so that would be the difference between the 5.5 and the 2.2, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And then remind us, I know you walked us through last time here, the user selected interest rate, that is sort of like an offer, and then the borrowers have to take on it. You also mentioned about just using another service to somewhat manage our position or take our rate. Is that after the bold, or is that during
No,
the
good.
user selected interest rate?
No, good question. So it's actually not based on, think of it like MakerDAO. When you go on to MakerDAO, there are, let's say, three vaults, right, that you can choose from. And you deposit your ETH and you can mint DAI. And in their case, they have a fixed amount where, let's say, it's 7% or whatever it is. Um, your over collateralized collateral is allowing you to mint the DAI, right? Same concept lies here. You're over collateralizing your position and you're minting a stablecoin against it. The interest rate is only for something called redemptions, which is essentially a way in which we maintain the peg of bold when it drops under one. So when bold is, let's say, 0.995, you can redeem it for the underlying rETH in the system as if it were worth $1. And essentially, it kind of affects the people who are paying the lowest amount of interest rate in the system. So that's why the average here you see is 5.4%. If you were to say set it at 3.5%, if Bolt ever dips to like 0.9949, you're the first one who kind of is underwater or could get redeemed. When redemptions happen, what happens is that your long exposure to your rETH, so let's say you had this position open, that position gets closed. There is no net loss, but your position gets closed. So, let's say if rETH tomorrow were to go, ETH, let's say, were to go up, I don't know, 15%, your position would be closed. So, in a case, it's kind of like you missed out on the price going higher. But say if you were to price, if tomorrow market were to crash and it were to go down 15%, you also don't have a net loss because your position is closed and stable. So you know what I mean? So the cool thing about the interest rate is that because maybe you don't want to be managing this redemption risk at all times. You don't want to think about it. You're on vacation. I don't know. Like you don't want to do whatever. We have these professional interest rate delegates who their sole purpose or their sole kind of remit is to make sure that you don't get redeemed. So you can kind of have them manage it for you. And yeah, they have the interest rate that they manage, and yeah, you can kind of sleep easy, so to speak.
And then if I choose, let's say, a higher interest rate, fearing an early redemption, but if I choose a higher interest rate, then in order for me to kind of pay back the loan, I still have to pay that higher interest rate to recover the over collateralized rETH deposit. Is that correct, or am I
Right.
misunderstanding?
Correct. But because you chose a higher interest rate, if you look here at the redeemable before you, because you chose, say, 6.8%, you are like, there's a lot more bold before you in the queue who are paying a lower interest rate that can get redeemed first. So that's like the risk reward that you're taking, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, perfect. And then the second half of kind of your demonstration here showed us, I guess, liquidity based investments, where once I have that bold and I'm paying an APY to borrow against my over collateralized rETH. But now I have the bold, and then the bold I can invest in DeFi in the various different liquidity pools that you showed that some are incentivized and they provide a higher APY than others. But the ideal is that the ultimate earn on that would be greater than the borrow APY that I had in order to acquire the bold. Is that the whole strategy, that the earn on the
Yeah,
bold was greater than the cost to borrow the bold?
exactly correct. So in the example that I have here, say you put in 30 rETH and you're borrowing 100,000 bold, you have a net APY between your uh, if you were to just leave this position as it is, you're earning 2.23%. But let's say um, you want to put this $100,000 to work while also having exposure to our ETH if you were to if ETH were to go up. So you're in the DeFi world, we call this like delta neutral strategies. So what you could do is you could take this 100,000 and you could go onto the venues I mentioned. So, but let's just say Curve for now. You could deposit it into say this bold USDC, USDF, FXUSD pool and earn 19% on that bold. So, um, yeah, while you're having your exposure to rETH going up, you're also earning on your bold, so to speak. Um, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. And then another question I have is, from the tools and the kind of Dune dashboards that you post, where we could sort by kind of total APR, and then obviously do our own research about the pros and cons or other risk factors for each of the liquidity pools that you highlighted. But is there a way to search to just look for one-sided liquidity, like many of your pools indicated bold along with some other analog or some other token? Do we have to provide both sides when we participate in those DeFi opportunities, or is it possible to only go in single-sided, like only contribute the bold into the pool?
Yeah, great question. So some of them do have zappers that you can kind of zap into. But the ones I highlighted to you were mainly yield opportunities that are like 15% or higher, right? If you're looking for more safer but still lucrative yield opportunities, we also have these stability pools here that are earning you like 5, 6% that are just single-sided bold, where you just have to just deposit your bold and that's it. Um, so to answer your question, a lot of them here um, have zappers, so you can zap into it with one asset. Some of them also don't. You'll have to manually acquire USDC and acquire USDAF or whatever on a DEX. But if you're looking for single-sided deposits, then we also have these three stability pools within Liquity, where you just deposit bold and yeah, you earn yield that way as well.
Thank
We
you.
are
That was very helpful.
we are looking just sorry just because we do recognize that for some of the more uh, novice DeFi users, let's say, that being having to swap across different stablecoins is a pain. So we are looking at different vaults on different chain on different platform you earn platforms where you can just deposit bold and then underlying they swap it into USDC and deposit on Curve. So we are looking at some more integrations other than the regular zappers that these protocols have as well.
Yeah, thank you. That was very helpful. I had one other question. Again, it might be a little bit of a novice question here, but I don't see other people coming in. But please come forward if you do. You mentioned a couple of times here I guess the clones of Liquity. can you explain that a little bit and how that kind of grows the Liquity ecosystem? Do you actually have other protocols that copy what Liquity is, but on other chains? And how does that derive revenue back to Liquity?
Yeah, great question. So just as a kind of a history lesson, Liquidity V1 was like one of the most forked protocols. I think after Aave, Uniswap, and Compound, I think we were the fourth most forked protocols. And we really didn't get any value back from the forks. A lot of them ended up rugging or going defunct, or there was not much of a. It just kind of put our reputation a little bit. It was a reputational risk, and we didn't get anything back. For Liquidity V2, we were thinking about a bootstrapping mechanism as to what we could do. We did not want to come up with a new token for it because we already had an existing token, and we were thinking, okay, what uh, we felt that the setting your own interest rate model, and since we're also a very small team, our focus should only be on Ethereum, and then for other chains, maybe since we already had so many forks for V1, probably there would probably be similar demand for forks for V2 because V2 is objectively, I would say, a better product. So our kind of bootstrapping mechanism was, okay, we're willing to have friendly forks for Liquidity V2 on each EVM chain or any EVM chain. But in order for us to give this license away to each of these chains, we require that these forks give us 4% of their token back on average to help grow our stablecoin. So if you look at this dashboard here on this Dune, these are the various forks that we have across all these chains. So there's one on Hyperliquid, on Chain, on Arbitrum, on Avalanche, and all. And each of them have a requirement to give 2.75% roughly to bold users on mainnet. So to the yield opportunities I mentioned on mainnet just now. So for example, on Curve, on Balancer, and they also have an obligation to give 1.25% of their token rewards to Bold and their stablecoin on their chain. So the whole purpose is that it's kind of a mutually beneficial relationship where we have a little bit of oversight over what type of code they're releasing and kind of helping them with any ecosystem growth at the start too, but also they give something back to us at Liquity to help grow Bold as well. And yeah, out of the 15 plus forks that we have signed, 8 are live at the minute, and we expect roughly 10 more to come online over the next 6 months. And yeah, so TLDR, bootstrapping mechanism, and kind of, yeah, mutually beneficial.
Excellent. That was very, very helpful.
No, of course. And each of them also, the idea is we're positioning ourselves as the Ethereum's benchmark rate for Ether, Rocket Pool Ether, Lido Ether, right? Because as I mentioned on this dashboard here, where if you were to compare our rates compared to everyone else, we're by far the cheapest in terms of borrowing. The same goes for the same idea kind of exists for all these other chains too, where they have their own token as collateral. So for Arbitrum, for example, Arb is a collateral on Neride. The idea is that Neride USD becomes Arbitrum's stablecoin, and the same goes for Hyperliquid. Felix becomes Hyperliquid stablecoin, like the de facto decentralized stablecoin in those venues too. Yeah.
And then how are you seeing now that you've kind of redeployed V2 and it's been, like you said, 3 to 4 months here? What are you seeing in terms of kind of the growth and the progression of the protocol?
Yeah, good question. So we had a really great start. We reached like 30 million within, I want to say, 2 months of launching. And then month 3 and month 4, sorry, 30 million in Bold, by the way. So our TVL, we reached, I think it was roughly around 150 million or so, and then around 30, 40 million, 30 million of gold within the first 2 months. And then we saw a pretty long stagnation period um, for like a one, 1.5 months or so, where we were just hovering between 30 to 45 million. And we would go up to 45, and then people would dump the gold back down or close their loans because of market uncertainty or whatever, and kind of we would go back down. However, the last 10 days or so, we have started to see an uptick once more. I guess it's mainly because of this thing I mentioned about, borrowing against ETH for just 1.9%. It's actually been quite a big narrative. The last few loan positions that we've seen have all come from these ETH borrowers who are leveraging up on their ETH for just 1.9%. And if you see here on the chart too, it kind of shows, if I'm just going to show the daily bold mint and burn. You see here, like, it was pretty stagnant for a while, and then from September 25th onwards, it's been mostly green shoots ever since. So we're now at 49 million or so. Um, my personal goal was hopefully to get to 100 mil by the end of the year for bold. Um, Maybe this psychological barrier of 50 million is going to be like a thing for us to overcome. And once we get over that, hopefully all these yield opportunities, all these forks are coming online too. So I think that will help as well. And, um, as some of these forks have been online for like 2, 3 months, they're also going to TG soon too. So when people start realizing that, oh shit, their Dune dashboard was actually correct, and APRs are actually could be end up becoming, your 20, 30, 40% APR, maybe that should hopefully also ignite a second wave as well. So we're starting to see shoots of a second wave, but um, let's see how things go over the next few months.
Thank you.
But yeah, we have a Dune dashboard where you can kind of, you know, see uh, kind of how the progress has been, what the TVL is, what the stablecoin supply is as well. One of the angles we're trying to also do is, reaching out to different foundations like the Ethereum Foundation, and then like pitching them, having bold as a part of their treasury, just holding bold, even if it's a few 100,000, because we really do believe that it's like the most decentralized dollar there is on mainnet. Um, I think you guys have shown the light there by paying your grantees in bold, I believe. Um, but yeah, hopefully more and more treasuries and foundations kind of take inspiration from that.
Yeah, correct on that. The GMC does take a position and diversifies the RPL into bold, and pays that out as one of the primary mechanisms for grant awardees.
Yeah, no, and I think before that, at one point, you guys were also doing LUSD, so I think you guys have been big proponents from the start um, of decentralization. It's just, right now in this semi-bull kind of market that we're at, like people just uh, forget about decentralization, unfortunately. And uh, where even I showed you, like, there's so many yield opportunities with Bold where you can get 15, 20%, and um, and also get exposure to all these airdrops. Yet, yeah, it's hard to compete, I suppose, with some of these centralized stables who I don't know, they're now like AEI stables and all this that are offering like 30, 40, 50%. Uh, but one thing to note is a black swan is never too far away. You saw what happened with Silicon Valley Bank, and you see all these centralized intermediaries that are involved, like um, one hack and I think it really shows the power of decentralized stables. So yeah, we'll see.
Absolutely. And then I guess as we kind of reach the end of our time here, let me just ask you a couple of questions. I guess if somebody wants to learn a little bit more about this, where do you recommend that they go? This was highly informative. Where can somebody who's maybe a novice or wants to explore the areas, or is a long-term LST holder and would like to explore these opportunities, where's the best place that they can go to learn how to do this and to do more research into the risks?
Yeah, a great question. Best is to come onto our Discord. Obviously, we have a big community who help answer any questions and concerns. We also have revamped our website, liquity.org. I'm going to put that onto the chat here. Um, Here, we clearly highlight, okay, the different value propositions of Bold itself, and also what you can do with the product, like borrow, multiply, which is leveraging up on ETH, earning with your Bold, and also the Friendly Fork program. Um, we on our website portion, we also on the docs portion, we do have a very detailed FAQ, which highlights, what are the main use cases and what are the differences to V1, what are the differences to other venues too. So yeah, the docs and the website, I would say, are the best resources.
Okay, excellent. And then last but not least, are you guys going to be at any upcoming conferences?
Yeah, we'll be at DevConnect. That's the next one we're going to be at. If you guys are there, would love to meet up, maybe even have a dinner or happy hour or something along those lines.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds like a great thing. I know many in the community are planning to be there, as well as most of the team members, I believe. And yeah, maybe circle back with Mav. I know that Rocket Pool is also going to do an event. The details are TBD, but it'd be great to do something, a little bit of a collab on that. And then, I know this year Ethereum Foundation is hosting kind of the World's Fair, where they're asking protocols to, come and demonstrate and introduce folks into the world of DeFi. Have you guys considered submitting an application to be part of that World's Fair on Monday?
No, we haven't actually, but if you have a link to, we'd be more than happy to.
Yeah. I'd be glad to send you that link. But yeah, it's I guess the first time they're doing that as part of Dev Connect. But they've asked all the protocols, and it seems like most everybody seems to be adhering to it and not doing any side events there on that Monday day. And
Kò lè
they're asking for all the
wá
big protocols to
báwọn kò
come
lè afford
forward
nǹkan
and
tó fẹ́
do a
fúnra ẹ̀. Go
demo.
and buy it yourself. Life is not hard. Ìyẹn ò mí pé bóyá wọn love ẹ àbí wọn nífẹ̀ẹ́. Nǹkan tó bá téèyàn bá lè
Yeah,
afford
our
èèyàn
guy
wá rà
here
fọmọ
was
rẹ̀.
on a call with someone else. But yeah,
Okay, yeah, I couldn't tell if you had a question or not there. Sorry, it took me a second.
no worries, no worries. No, yeah, that's very cool. I think it's cool to see them kind of embracing DeFi a little bit more. Um, uh, but we gotta we at Liquidity are also trying to convince the foundation themselves to, as I mentioned earlier, take up shine some light onto Bold. I think it's very hard to build immutable DeFi that is non-upgradable, where contracts are set in stone. You guys at Rocket Pool, I'm sure, can attest to it, and it would be nice to see the foundation themselves taking some uh, a stake in the game, or skin in the game, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can attest to both. Just the difficulty it is to make everything on chain and immutable, and then also just the challenge and the uphill struggle for it. So we definitely understand that.
Yeah, and one more thing as well. I just putting it out there, as I mentioned, we have a lot of forks which are online, but a lot more will be coming online too, and they're always on the lookout for additional collaterals to include, and they do ask us from time to time what they should. And if there's a particular chain where you have a lot of rETH liquidity, where you would like maybe a place to borrow against it that's not Ethereum, do let us know as well, and we can pass it on to some relevant teams. I'm not sure. I think Base might be one where you guys have a lot of liquidity, but I'm not sure. I need to check. But if you do, then do let me know.
Yeah, maybe that'd be a great thing for both Grant and Mav to follow up on. It's been a while since I've looked at our kind of L2 liquidity pools, but I know there was a big push not too long ago for the Ronin chain. but I don't know where most of our liquidity is. I'm sure there's a bot command somewhere that indicates that, but it's been a while since I've looked for it myself. But that's an excellent thought, and thank you very much for that offer to help kind of build some synergy around it.
Of course, my pleasure. Cool. I think we can probably wrap it up there. Thanks a lot, guys. Well, as always, as I mentioned, hey,
I actually have one question.
yeah, please.
And it's funny, I actually work with Neerite and Papa Joseph, helping him build that liquidity there. I know that Liquity, I mean, I enjoyed the V1 versions. I was super excited when V2 came out. Do love the decentralization factor. It's super innovative where it doesn't leak any value, which is really cool. Why do you think, other than obviously decentralized stablecoins is becoming the big meta for this cycle, but why do you think we as like Liquity members are struggling to try to like really build out that I guess TVL for the protocols on all the different chains. I know on Right we probably got I think maybe 5-7 million. But it seems like it's a kind of like a hustle to try to get protocols to come and borrow and use these stable coins. Do you think there needs to be more on-chain things or more like off-chain be able to, take those stable coins and use it like in your bank account? I know Neerite has like the streaming factor, which is really cool, but I don't think many people understand or use it.
I think there's a great question. It's something I've wondered myself, and I think from the conversations I have with a bit like institutional type players and bigger bigger players, let's say, is that one thing they always ask me is, can I swap 5 million BOL to USDC in one go? It's that external liquidity that we need to build for CDPs, which is very hard to bootstrap. Ourselves at Liquity, like we've done a decent enough job where out of the 49 million or so, we have, I think, 20 million indexes. But like it's that really, I think, without having like sufficient liquidity where you can swap in and out of stables. I think it's quite DP notion of like setting your own interest rate. Even here, when I was doing the demo, I think it's a very cool concept once you get an idea and hang around it. But for a normal DeFi user who's using Aave or whatever, it's a bit challenging to think about redemptions and the setting your own rate. What rate do I set it at? Like that's a bit of a, I think a UX challenge that kind of puts people off. I think that's where these rate delegates, having that being like the kind of default kind of strategy might be a way to go. But then if we also, that's also a chicken and egg problem, because if everyone has a managed interest rate model, then there is no interest rate market that is able to get developed, right? So that's a bit of a challenge as well. But yeah, I think the liquidity portion is the key, man. I think yeah, it's a hard challenge. I don't know how you can solve it other than by throwing points and tokens and just prioritizing that instead of the stability pool. But yeah, I think that's a challenge. Yeah.
Okay, that part makes sense on the slippage area and maybe like building some liquidity within POSWAP. The other part I was thinking of how we can build this liquidity, even with Nearite and with Bold, was maybe where Bold can be accepted in another stable coin. This is similar to like obviously like CDP MakerDAO. The way they were able to scale is because they accepted USDC. Now there was some centralization risk there, but what if it would be like the opposite, where you can use a decentralized stablecoin into another protocol and use it? And one of the examples I was recently thinking about is Cap.money. You putting it
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah. No, that's a great suggestion, and that is definitely some sinks that we're looking at. They're not one of the the Cap is not one that we're in conversation with, but there are a few others who are planning to have Bold as a part of their collateral. I'm yet to see. I want to see how this meta evolves and actually see how much of a sinkhole that provides. But yeah, that's definitely something that we're looking at. Not only that, actually, also having maybe S bold and yearn bold, which are the yield bearing variants of bold, which are getting 5% yield or whatever it is, as a backing for a stablecoin too. That's also another one that we're exploring as well.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit of concern on the YNS bowl just because if you flock so many people into it, the yield condenses and then it's just not as attractive anymore. We
Yeah.
kind of ran into this with Nerite with the YUSND in our balancer pool. It went from like having 10% plus yield down to I think like 4%, and then it created like less attractiveness to it.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's also for sure like a chicken and egg problem. That's also one thing I've been telling some of these newer forks that we're signing on, that try to, if you have 40 to 50% of your stablecoin in the stability pools, like that's more than enough. You should try to aim for the liquidity, because that's just from my experience here with Bold, that's the main challenge. But one other thing that we've been looking at as well is, that we have all these different chains coming up with like pre-deposit vaults and whatnot. Maybe having Bold as a pre-deposit asset there too. Something like what Plasma did for USDT, I believe, where you could deposit it, pre-deposit it, I guess, and then when they go live, it goes live. So that's also another angle.
Yeah, that makes sense. The pre-deposit side of things. And then thanks for the insight on the 40 to 50% on the stability pool. The only other part I was thinking that might end up helping is just more of the PIL bribes and trying to kind of creating Liquidity into some of VE model in its own way, where people want to hold Liquidity tokens or want to borrow and direct a lot of those incentives into other areas. As an example of like the STETH or actually the rETH vault with Rock Solid. If the rETH vault with Rock Solid decides to actually go through the process of minting Bold and using Summerstone to manage it, or they manage it themselves, and then taking that Bold and putting it into various DeFi, we can like have the PIL voters that would get bribed to go ahead and incentivize where the Rock Solid vault decides to place that Bold liquidity.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's an interesting initiative if you can get them to propose it. I think the community would be down. My only thing there is I think Bold is still a little too small for us to get that going. I think once we get to like 75, 80 million Bold supply, then I think we can look at these initiatives, just because just out of my personal conversations I have, the liquidity component. That's why vast majority of the PIL right now, 80% is going to schools, Ekubo and whatnot, right? Because I think that's the one that brings us the most value. But yeah, when we get altered supply number, say 75 million or whatever, I think that should help. Actually, I have some out on that too. You're actually creating a vault very soon where they where you deposit ETH, they're starting off with ETH, and they'll move on to our and then on the ground go on to Liquity to make interest rate ETH around 1%, and then they deposit that Bold in various Y Bold strategies, be it Y Bold just holding YSY Bold, or putting YSY Bold onto a symmetry as well, and doing like very low leverage, I think just 2x leverage or something like that. For the year, they earn 5-6% on ETH, better than what you would earn on say, lending it out on Aave and whatnot. And for us, but it's great because that mint new, right? Because they're using minting new Bold underlying as a strategy. Yeah, so that's something that we're working on in the background, that we want these one-click ETH vaults, or one-click ETH vaults and one-click wrap stake ETH vaults, capturing this delta neutral spread. I think that's the one that I think will be quite successful.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I think that would be great. And then one last thing, I know we're probably over time. but these are just like ideas keep having right now. And maybe both Liquity, you have a little bit of a touch in this, where both it will be the stable coin for a purpose. Obviously, it needs to be, again, it goes back to the liquidity problem, but trying to like build that out would be kind of cool to have, because then that would create a lot of that to avoid slippage.
Yeah, no, that's definitely part of our next phase, I would say, once we hit that 75 million or so number. Yeah, I always envisioned a world where we would have Bold on like ideally like hyper liquid or lighter or anything along those lines that you can leverage along with. But yeah, no, thanks. Great ideas. Love it.
No, thank you for being on here, and thanks for whoever set up this community call. It's very, very informative and definitely enjoying. Now I know some new places to put my Bold.
Yeah, for sure. Just some alpha that I wanted to share while you guys are here. The Yearn Vault I mentioned, there'll be a one-click Yearn Vault, but we're also speaking, the fork opportunities that I mentioned, how you have to bridge onto every fork and everything and swap. And okay, there are some zappers, but it's not like super everywhere. We are working with a team to help build a bold fork airdrop vault where you just deposit Bold as a user, and then underground, behind the scenes, they will bridge that Bold, swap it for USDC, and do everything under the hood and try to get you yield across those 7 or 8 different chains I mentioned. So that I think will also be actually pretty cool for maybe having more Bold demand.
Yeah, airdrop farmers, we're getting lazier. We just want to vault for it and let it do everything for us.
I know, man. That's why these vaults like Veda and all are doing so well and have so much DVL.
Yeah, I'm laughing at that. Yeah, we do want it easier in one click, don't we? All right. Well, thank you very much, Spartan, for those questions. Those were excellent for it. And Sam, thank you very much for coming on and spending the better part of an hour with us here. I think I've certainly learned a lot, and I'm excited to go continue my exploration of the Liquity V2 protocol here. It sounds absolutely fascinating.
Thanks so much, guys. Take care. Bye.
All right. See y'all. Bye.